Have you ever felt torn between who you truly are and who people expect you to be? Have you ever been afraid of disappointing someone or not being accepted for simply being you? Sometimes, in an attempt to please or fit in, we end up hurting those who love us the most. And that's exactly what this story is about. Get ready to dive into a journey of love, regret, and overcoming challenges that might hit closer to home than you imagine. Are you ready? But before we start, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching this story from. I'd love to know. Let's dive in. Charlotte was always a practical and determined woman. She worked as a receptionist at a small office in the heart of the city. With a warm smile and a gentle voice, she was the first person clients saw upon entering. Her job was simple, but she performed it with dedication and organization. Despite this, Charlotte dreamed of advancing in her career, believing that with effort and determination, she could achieve something greater. Henry, on the other hand, was a mechanic passionate about cars and the owner of a workshop he had inherited from his father. He worked hard, often late into the night, ensuring every customer left satisfied. Despite his exhausting routine, he always kept a smile on his face and a positive attitude, which endeared him to everyone. Fate brought them together on an ordinary day. Charlotte's car broke down on her way to work, and Henry was called to assist her. He arrived in his old truck, stepped out with his tools, and got to work. While adjusting the engine, Charlotte, worried about the time, started chatting with him. The ease of their conversation made them both laugh and connect. In that moment, something special began to bloom. After that encounter, Henry found an excuse to call Charlotte a few days later, asking if her car was running fine. She smiled as she picked up the call, and what seemed like a simple exchange of pleasantries evolved into long conversations and eventually an invitation to go out. Their first date was simple, at a small local diner, but it remained etched in their memories as the beginning of something extraordinary. 2 years later, Charlotte and Henry were married. The wedding took place in the backyard of Charlotte's childhood home, decorated with lights and flowers lovingly arranged by friends and family. Henry made sure to give Charlotte a special gift, the car he had repaired the day they met, carefully and lovingly restored. The first years of their marriage were filled with hard work and dedication. They lived in a small rented apartment and saved every penny to fulfill their dream of buying a house. Henry spent long hours at the workshop, while Charlotte poured herself into her work at the office. Despite all the challenges, they always found time to care for each other, whether through small gestures of affection or late-night conversations. Over time, Henry decided to expand his workshop. Using their savings and a small loan, he purchased new tools and hired an assistant. His reputation as an honest and skilled mechanic quickly spread. Meanwhile, Charlotte began to catch the attention of her boss at the office. Recognizing her efficiency and dedication, he promoted her to the role of senior executive secretary. The new position came with more responsibilities and a significant salary increase. Charlotte's promotion brought changes to her life. She started attending corporate events and important meetings, often alongside her boss. This new environment was vastly different from her previous routine, and while she enjoyed the recognition, she also felt the pressure of being surrounded by people who valued status and appearances above all else. Henry, on the other hand, never cared about such things. To him, what mattered was being honest, taking good care of his customers, and keeping his workshop running. He realized he didn't fit into Charlotte's new world and, during an honest conversation, suggested that she attend the events alone. "I don't want you to feel uncomfortable because of me, love. You deserve to shine in this new world," he said with a smile. Charlotte began attending corporate events without Henry. At first, she spoke about him with pride, but over time, she started feeling that his work and simplicity might be judged. She gradually stopped mentioning her personal life and eventually avoided disclosing that she was married. Henry noticed the changes. Charlotte became more evasive when he asked about the events and seemed increasingly distant. Even so, he chose not to confront her. Instead, he focused on the growth of his workshop, which had now become one of the most renowned in the region. Charlotte was at the height of yet another corporate event. The ballroom was impeccably decorated, with lights hanging from the ceiling and tables draped in crisp white linen. She wore an elegant dress that seemed tailor-made for her, but inside, she carried a restlessness she was trying hard to ignore. The conversations flowed, centered on work goals, new partnerships, and personal anecdotes. Everything followed the usual rhythm of these events until an unexpected question broke the pattern. "Charlotte, you never talk much about your family. Are you married? Do you have kids?" A colleague smiled curiously, holding a glass of wine. Charlotte felt a chill run down her spine. She laughed nervously, taking a sip of her drink to buy herself some time while the question lingered in the air like an unbearable weight. "Oh, my personal life. Well, it's complicated, you know? I'm so focused on work that I barely have time to think about it." The light laughter around her masked the discomfort, but inside, Charlotte was waging a silent battle. She knew she should have told the truth, shared about Henry, the man who had always stood by her side. But the thought of exposing her life to the judgment of her colleagues, who placed so much importance on status and sophistication, made her hesitate. That moment struck a blow to her conscience. As the conversation shifted to another topic, she felt an overwhelming heaviness in her chest. "What am I doing?" she thought. Henry never cared about appearances. He had always supported her, believed in her potential, and done everything he could to make her happy. In return, she was hiding him. The guilt became nearly unbearable, but still, Charlotte maintained her facade. The evening wore on, and dinner was drawing to a close. The people around her were lively, laughing and chatting as they began to leave the restaurant. Charlotte tried to keep up with the group, but her mind was elsewhere, caught in a whirlwind of thoughts. Outside, however, fate had prepared the moment she feared most. In the parking lot near the entrance, Henry was crouched beside a client's car, fixing it after it had broken down right there. His clothes were smeared with grease, and he worked with his usual focus and determination. He didn't notice Charlotte at first, but when he heard her voice among the group, he looked up. Their eyes met. Charlotte froze. The shock hit her like an electric current. Her husband was there, in front of all the colleagues she had been deceiving. He looked exactly as she had feared they would see him, in work clothes, dirty, yet with that calm and genuine expression so characteristic of him. The group around them noticed the discomfort. One colleague asked casually, "Do you know him, Charlotte?" "He's looking at you." Henry, sensing the situation, said nothing. He remained still, waiting to see how Charlotte would respond. His gaze wasn't angry but carried a restrained sadness that pierced her heart. He understood what was happening. He knew this was the moment when she would have to make a choice. Charlotte felt the weight of guilt crushing her. She knew Henry didn't deserve this, but consumed by fear and shame, she made the worst decision possible. "Oh yes," she said with a nervous laugh. "He's fixed my car before. Very competent." Henry froze. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. As the group laughed and began getting into their cars, Charlotte avoided his eyes and walked away with her colleagues, not looking back. Driving home that night, guilt consumed Charlotte like a slow poison. Henry's face, his silent and pain-filled expression, wouldn't leave her mind. She knew she had crossed a line. In that moment, she realized her shame had turned into disrespect. It wasn't just about hiding who he was. She had publicly denied the man who had always supported her, the man who loved her unconditionally. She entered their empty apartment, kicked off her shoes, and sat on the couch. Tears began streaming down her face as memories flooded back. Every moment Henry had stood by her side, every sacrifice he had made to help her grow. And what had she given him in return? Shame and rejection. "I'm a horrible person," she whispered to herself, her voice echoing in the silence. Yet, even under the crushing weight of guilt, Charlotte didn't know how to fix what she had done. All she could do was wait and hope to find a way to recover what she had lost, if that was even possible. After the last restaurant customers dispersed and the work on the car was finished, Henry decided not to go home right away. Instead, he drove to a nearby park, a quiet place he often visited when he needed to gather his thoughts. He sat on a wooden bench under the soft glow of a street lamp, letting the stillness of the night surround him. His mind was a whirlwind. He loved Charlotte, of that, there was no doubt. Every moment they had shared, from the day they met to the nights filled with laughter and connection, filled his heart. But her behavior that night had wounded him in a way he didn't know how to repair. "Is she really ashamed of me? Is our love not enough for her?" he wondered, as the evening breeze gently rustled the leaves around him. Henry spent a long time there, reflecting on the good moments and trying to understand the reasons behind it all. He knew Charlotte wasn't a bad person. He understood her mistakes stemmed from insecurity, not malice. Even so, the pain was real, and he wasn't sure if she fully grasped how deeply it had hurt him. Meanwhile, back home, Charlotte was inconsolable. She sobbed quietly, her head in her hands, replaying every detail of Henry's expression when he heard her lie to her colleagues. It felt as if she had thrown away the most precious love she had ever received in her life. I was so selfish, she thought as tears streamed down her face. Henry has always stood by me. He's always supported me, never judged me, and never tried to be anything other than himself. And I was ashamed of him. Ashamed of the most genuine, loving man I've ever known. Charlotte knew she had to do something. Waiting for Henry to come home felt like an eternity, but she knew she needed to face him and ask for forgiveness. It wasn't just an apology, it was a confession of her wrongs and a promise to change. The fear that he might not forgive her made her heart ache, but she was determined to be honest. It was late when Henry finally arrived home. He entered silently, placing his keys on the table as he did every night. Charlotte, sitting on the couch, quickly stood when she heard him. Her eyes were still red from crying. "Henry, please, can we talk?" Her voice was shaky, almost pleading. He looked at her for a moment without saying anything, then nodded. He sat in a nearby chair and waited for her to begin. Charlotte took a deep breath, summoning the courage she needed, and started. "Henry, I don't even know where to start, but I have to be honest. Today, at the restaurant, I did something terrible. I made a mistake that I now see as unforgivable. I lied. I denied you. I denied the man who is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And all of this, why? Because I was ashamed. Because I was afraid of how others might judge me. I put appearances above what really matters." She paused for a moment, fighting back tears, but continued. "You never asked me to be different. You never demanded anything from me except love and respect, and yet I failed you. I hurt you, Henry, and I don't even have the words to describe how much I regret it. The truth is, I lost my way. I let myself be swept up by a world that values status and appearances, and in the process, I forgot to value what truly matters. You, us, the love we've built together." She knelt before him, holding his hands in hers. "I know I can't undo what I've done, but I promise I will never again put anything above our love. Henry, you are my heart, my strength, and I am so sorry for hurting you. Please forgive me. Give me the chance to make things right." Henry remained silent for a moment, looking at their intertwined hands. He took a deep breath before finally speaking, his voice calm but full of emotion. "Charlotte, when I met you, I knew you were special. From the very first moment, I saw someone who could transform anything around her with love and dedication. And that's why I always believed in us. I've always known that together, we could overcome anything." He paused, his voice slightly trembling. "But today, you hurt me in a way I never thought you would. It wasn't just the lies, Charlotte. It was the shame. Knowing that you felt ashamed of me, the man who has always tried to be his best for you, was hard." Charlotte squeezed his hands, tears streaming down her face. "I know, Henry, I know. And I'm so sorry for making you feel that way." Henry continued, "But I also know that we all make mistakes. And you had the courage to admit yours and ask for forgiveness. That to me means so much. Because deep down, I know you're still the same person I've loved from the very beginning. And if you're willing to change, to put what truly matters first, then I want to try again." He pulled her into a tight embrace, his voice softening. "Charlotte, I love you. And I believe in our love. I just need you to believe in it too. Let's leave this behind and start fresh together." That night, Charlotte and Henry had the most honest conversation of their lives. They talked about their fears, their mistakes, and their hopes for the future. For the first time in a long time, they felt truly connected. From that day forward, Charlotte made it a point to show the world how much she loved and respected Henry. And he, as always, remained the loving and genuine man she had always known him to be. Together, they rediscovered the strength of their love and the importance of never letting the outside world interfere with what truly matters. If this story touched your heart, remember, true love isn't perfect, but it can overcome any obstacle when there's forgiveness, respect, and a genuine desire to start anew. Charlotte and Henry's story is more than just a romance. It's proof that true love requires effort, honesty, and above all, courage to acknowledge mistakes and seek forgiveness. They both learned that love isn't defined by status or appearances, but by the strength of partnership and mutual respect. Despite their missteps, they chose to start over, reinforcing the bond that had brought them together in the first place. This journey teaches us that in any relationship, there will be challenges and moments of doubt, but what truly matters is how we handle those obstacles. Forgiveness and the willingness to change are essential pillars for building a love that lasts and inspires. If you enjoyed this story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below sharing what you think, and if possible, rate this story on a scale from 1 to 5. Your feedback is invaluable to the growth of this channel and helps us continue bringing you heartwarming stories like this one. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Share this story with someone special and spread this message of love and perseverance. See you next time.